Hey guys, we're talking about wisdom, something that is we all need, a commodity that's not often found in too many people, but we found out where to find it, and we know who hasn't got it. The scripture talks to us about fools. Fools despise wisdom. Fools despise discipline, and that's what makes them fools. Now, we spoke last time about this foolish behavior, but Jesus confronts one day a very foolish man. This man came to Jesus and he had an ulterior motive. He came to Jesus and he said, "So Jesus, can you help me with my problem? I have a brother who will not share his inheritance with me." And Jesus saw right through him. He saw that the problem was not the inheritance. The problem was his own greed. He wanted more than what he probably deserved. Now that's foolish behavior. Jesus saw the issue of greed and he tells a great story. He says, "Let me tell you about a man," just a parable. He said, "Let me tell you about a man who was a farmer. Man, God blessed him that season. Best rains ever, best harvest ever. And man, everything had come together beautifully. And this foolish man stood back and he looked at his fields and he said, wow, this is awesome. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to break down these old barns. I'm going to build new barns to contain the blessing that I've had this last year by way of the wheat crop that I have grown. And then I'm going to sit back and I'm going to eat, drink, and I'm going to be merry." And then Jesus said, this man didn't realize the angel of death that night would knock on his door. And he would open the door and he would see the angel of death. And the angel of death was going to say to him, "Man, you fool, you fool. You did all of that work. You stored up all that money. And now tonight your soul is going to be required of you." And Jesus defined that man, not just of his foolish behavior, but of being an absolute fool. Now, there's a parallel for us. There's a lesson for each one. If the cap fits, wear it. You know, people, I remember as a kid being grown up in a mining town up in Zimbabwe, and there was a place we called the Cutting, and it had iron pyrites there. And iron pyrites to a fool looks like gold. And you could see the iron pyrites veins going through the rock. And we kids, we would go down there with our hammers and we would chip away the rocks. And we would bring these rocks back and we'd go to my dad and say, "Dad, we're going to be rich, man. I have found gold." And all we'd really found after the humor of my father wore off, he would say, "Guys, you've been conned, man. You've worked so hard. You've labored hard in the heat of the day. You've carried all these stones back to us. But all you've got is fool's gold." You see, not everything that glitters is gold. And when we look for gold, it's not necessarily wrong, but when our motive is greed, and greed is simply wanting more than we need. There's need and there's greed, and we've got to work out where the line is between these two things. Jesus condemns greed in every shape or form. He has no time for it. Because you see, if you are greedy, that simply means that you're not trusting God. We need to work hard. We need to do as well as we can financially. There's nothing wrong with that. Jesus says if a man doesn't work, he shouldn't eat. So we need to work, and we need to work hard in order to be able to eat and supply for our families and all that good stuff. But when need turns into greed, we know we're in trouble. When we need a whole lot more than what we really need, then we think we're entered into the realm of what greed looks like. So I guess this is an opportunity for a bit of self-evaluation. God says to you today, don't worry about any more. Enough is enough. And when you have enough and you have God, you have more than enough. In fact, even when you don't have enough, but you have God, you still have enough. And the amount of time and the energy and the sweat and the perspiration that we put in to try to make that extra bit of money, and God is looking and say, "Hey guys, why don't you just trust me? You honor me with your finance, I'll honor you, and you can trust me. I've never ever been found wanting." I urge you today to have a look at your lives. Are you sweating it out there? Well, it's good to work hard. We need to sweat. Probably we don't sweat enough, but we got to sweat for the right reason. The moment our need has become greed, we're in trouble. The trouble with greed is when need becomes fulfilled, it's got a beautiful taste to it. and it's insatiable. It's something you want more and more of. And as we get more and more of, that's never enough. We want more and we want more, and until we find our lives dominated by not need, but by simply the greed. I've said that a number of times in the hopes that you'll think about it, and I hope that you will pray that God would just show you his all-sufficiency. He is El Shaddai, the all-sufficient one. He is Jehovah Jireh, the one who provides. I look back on my own life and I think of the times when in a secular situation I worked probably more than I needed to in order to get what I didn't need. And I know now that I have regrets about that. I could have used that time far, far better. In the service of the kingdom, in time with my family, I could have done a whole lot better, but it's too late now. And so when we look at this, people, it's all about what it really means to trust God. May we grow in that, people, and may it become something that becomes a joy to us. Think about these things. Bye.